A happy new year to each one here. A welcome to each one who is present in the building, and those of you joining online or on Facebook, welcome. And a happy new year. May God's blessings be on you at the turn of the year, but also throughout 2024. It's exciting to have visitors here. I trust that you will be encouraged this morning by the Holy Spirit. One might conclude this morning that I am continuing Scott's series, the road trip series, because it's going to tie in, and probably some of what I say will remind you of things that you've heard in the last few months. It was a good series for me. It was just so practical, and I cannot think of something that we need more in this day and age than wisdom. You know, if I would ask you, what's the thing you need most? A lot of us might be apt to say money, stuff. We need wisdom. The picture that is on the wall behind me here is Route 1 in California. That road, I'm told, I hope to drive it someday. Is there anyone in here who has driven Route 1? A few of you, a couple drivers, okay. And I'm told it is a gorgeous drive. People will go up to San Francisco and then drive down the coast on Route 1 because the views are spectacular. Route 1 is full of twists and turns. And there are signposts along the way to guide those on the road, to warn them of what is ahead, to keep the drivers safe, so that we would navigate wisely the twists and turns and obstacles that you face along the way on Route 1. The goal, of course, is to safely reach our destination. I want to drive this someday. I want to take this journey. What a trip. What a view. I can assure you that when or if I ever drive Route 1, my eyes will be on the road while I'm driving. If I want to enjoy the view, I'll pull over at one of the many outlooks along the way. Accidents on this road result in fatalities. Distracted driving on this road prevents people from safely arriving at their destination. Far too many of us, perhaps, are in a similar situation. We are on our own Route 1 with our lives. Scott preached a little while ago about recognizing the warning lights on the dashboard, the things in our lives that give us an indication that something is not as it should be, or that things ought to change. Far too many of us are on the highway of life in similar situations. We are sitting on the roadside, going nowhere, with our hoods open, wondering how we should proceed in our situations. How are we to move forward? And confused, too many times we contact everyone else for advice. That's not always negative. But think about this, who you contact first when you are in a hard situation is likely the answer to the question, who do you trust most? The one you go to first, the self-help books, the friend, the one you go to first is likely, we want to go to the one we trust. And we go there first. We want to get an answer soon. We want to close that hood and carry on towards our destination. And so many times we fail to contact the manufacturer, or perhaps even the manufacturer's manual. Or perhaps we fail to contact the certified mechanic who uses the manual. We tend to go everywhere else first. And when we go to all other sources before we go to God, it is likely an indication that we do not trust Him or His ways in our situation. Is that a fair statement? When we go elsewhere before we go to Him, it means that's who or what we trust most. And so far too many, something that I think is a fair statement and might sound harsh, is far too many of us are believers in a God we don't trust. We believe in Jesus. We believe that He walked on earth. We believe that He came to through Mary in the miraculous conception and that He was born miraculously. We believe it. And we believe by faith that He is able to bring us to heaven. By the grace of God through the salvation and the finished work of Jesus Christ, we believe it. But there is a disconnect between believing in the salvation through Jesus Christ that will bring us safely to our destination. There's a disconnect between believing that and trusting Him to safely navigate us through life. Whatever your situation is, saying, God, I trust you with this. This is in your hands. I didn't see this coming. God, I know that I am not outside of your plan. I trust you. And we sometimes fail to trust Him to guide us in our situations, in our confusion, in our anxieties. And every one of us here can relate with those terms. You know, some of us might think, oh, yeah, I'm probably the only one who struggles with confusion. So much of the time, anxiety, discouragement. You are not alone. If that's how you feel, reach out. Reach out to someone. Reach out to God first, but reach out to someone. You are not alone. And just likely all of us who live authentically can relate at some time period in our lives to going through a season of either confusion, discouragement, anxiety, and the list goes on. And so we need wisdom to know how to live and how to apply the truth in everyday decisions. We need wisdom. And so the sermon I have entitled, Trusting the God You Believe In. Taking your life every day and simply placing it into His hands and saying, God, today, it's your day. You know, and I know I've said this before, but I try not to pray, God, go with me today. Rather, God, give me the humility and the grace to go with you. He is already in today. He, unlike me, He knows what today holds. And so since He's already there, I want to go with Him. It's not that, God, as I plod through this day or as I blast my own way into the unknown, I hope you come with me. And so we need wisdom more than anything. Wisdom is the ability to perceive the true nature of a thing. Wisdom is the ability to look at a situation. Wisdom is the ability to perceive the true nature of a thing, what's really going on, and then have the ability to apply or implement the will of God regarding that perception. That comes from Tony Evans, and he calls it the art of skillful living. So wisdom, the ability to perceive the true nature of a thing, what's really going on, and then have the ability to apply or implement the will of God. And God has a will for every single situation. He has a desire. There is nothing where He says, well, it just doesn't matter. He actually cares intimately. And I know, I've said this story so many times, but little did I know that this moment in my childhood would solidify my faith in God and Jesus Christ. It is the simplest story, but I will carry it with me, and some of you know which story it is. But when I couldn't find my mitten and the rest of my siblings were going out to sled and I couldn't find my mitten and I poured my heart out to God. I was probably about 4 years old. I remember just saying, God, show me where this mitten is. I remember what it looked like. And I had looked on the registers and I had looked in the mittens drawer and it wasn't there. And I cried out to God, and I went back to the mitten drawer, and it was right there, lying right in plain sight at the front of the drawer. As an adult, I'm apt to say I didn't look properly. As a child, I just believed it was a miracle. In that childlike faith, God just put the mitten there. And why not? So, does he care about lost mittens? Sure did for that little guy. And I had no idea that when I'm old and gray, I would still be sharing that story. But it's just never you have your own stories on that. Wisdom is the ability to apply truth every day in every situation. That's what wisdom is. Wisdom is the ability to apply truth every day in every situation. Solomon understood that when he asked God for wisdom over wealth. If someone were to ask me, Calvin, I'm going to give you whatever you want. Oh man, it'd be embarrassing what I probably would ask for. Because obviously I'm not Solomon. And he said, God, I need wisdom. Wisdom over wealth. In the book of Proverbs, he writes that wisdom, in chapter 1, at the beginning of his writings, chapter 1, verse 20, he says, wisdom cries aloud in the streets. It's here. It needs to be accessed. Excuse me. What he's saying is the wisdom is screaming in the street. It's saying, listen to me, hear me. It is here. It is available. He says, you need me. And he continues in verse 22. He says this. He says, how long, Solomon 1 verse 22, didn't know it was here. It says, how long, O simple ones, will you love being simple? If someone were to say that to me, I may be apt to take offense. What do you mean? How long, you simple one? In fact, maybe Scott actually used this verse now that I think of it. But will you love being simple? Wisdom is the ability to apply truth in every situation, every day. Many of us sitting here today would not be where we are, if we had demonstrated wisdom in our lives or situations in the past. If we had focused on the wisdom of God, if we had sought his wisdom, we would not have perhaps all of the same scars, the same struggles, the same hard things that we have if we had sought God's wisdom. Many of you know that one of the most painful parts of my journey has been our financial loss. If I had sought God's wisdom, it would have spared me a lifetime of pain to a point. Many of us can relate with that. It's just a different situation. You have your own story, perhaps your own struggle with addiction. And if we would seek the face of God, if we would seek his wisdom every day, in every situation, we would spare ourselves so much pain and so many hard things. if we focus on the wisdom of God, if we had sought him, if we had gone to him in the midst of temptation, if we set our eyes on him, on his desire for us, on his will, on his truth, if we had consulted God and his wisdom, if we had navigated the unexpected twists and turns of our lives in that light, we would undoubtedly avoid hardship or disaster or catastrophe, or pain that is both caused to ourselves and to others, and of course to the heart of our Father. But praise God, I don't want to stop here. He is a Father who redeems. He does not leave us alone. He sent the Redeemer. We are simply celebrating that in this season. He is one who redeems. He takes what is broken and he redeems it. Now, I'm not going to be focusing on that. I want to focus on trusting God in our everyday decisions this morning. But he is a redeemer. And so as you look back at 2023, maybe you have regrets. Maybe you really messed up. It's important that we don't just forget that. Maybe 2023 was a year of struggle. And here we are at the end of it. I talked with someone just recently who said, I am so glad to be at the end of this year. I am so done with it. Tomorrow is 2024, Lord willing. Unless you choose to do things differently, the same patterns continue. Unless we choose to seek the Redeemer, unless we choose to live by the Spirit, unless we choose to apply the wisdom, to apply truth every day in every situation, we will stay in the same circumstance. And so, perhaps 2023 is a year that you are glad is in the past. Maybe it's one that has been painful for you. And so you're ready for a new start or a clean sheet, and you're ready for this new thing. And that's what God does. He does make new things. Between these years, 23 and 24, I think it's important to intentionally look back and consider what has been. I think that is so important. I try to do it daily. At the end of a day, when I'm going to bed, my prayer is often, perhaps I intercede there for people as well, but often for myself, it is going backwards through my day. And considering, the triumphs or perhaps the failures. Are there people that I need to make things right with? We should do that with the year as well. We should look back. We should bookmark the good memories that were created. This is a time to remember the triumphs of 2023, the good things, the victories, large and small. These serve as encouragement when we face discouragement or when we're facing the pressures. You look back to when you drove that stake in the ground and said, from this day forward, right? And so remember those good things. Those confessions made, those admissions. It's also a time to look back and reflect on the hard lessons learned. A time to remember the things we never want to do again. A time to remember the failures, the losses, the mistakes, the sins. And so we remember and we reflect. And it is important. We don't just sweep those under the carpet. Perhaps it means making a phone call today or tomorrow or next week. Perhaps it means going for a drive to someone's house and saying, hey, I have something to make right. This is a good time to reflect, to remember, and courageously in the wisdom of God, apply the truth, His truth, into our situations. Trusting the God you believe Him. Do you trust Him? You believe in Him, but do you trust Him? And so this morning, how do we trust a God with our past and with our future? We reflect on the past year, like I've said. Probably we've all heard this. Maybe many of us have said it. Hindsight is 20/20. Well, it's only 20/20 if we recognize it, if we choose to recognize it. So as we look back, remember the good things, the healing, the answered prayers, the growth. Recognize the hard things, the sadness, hurt, pain, loss. Mark those down. Those are parts of, those are parts of your story that shape you. So many times, I know I've said this before, so bear with me, but so many times when I meet someone I really admire and I say, I want to become like him. And then I hear his story and I go, maybe I don't want to be like him that much. Because so many times those strong characters are shaped through the hard things, refined through fires in their lives. And so be intentional on reflecting on your story. Plan on what habits you wish to change. And then as you look forward, as we look ahead, what will it take for this next year to be a good year? That we might, in a year from now, say, 2024, that was a good year. That was a year where I put some monuments in my life. Ebenezer's, where I said, hereunto, God has helped me to this thing. And God is helping me. And so I look back at that stake in the ground, that flag of surrender, that pillar, and I say, that's where I made the commitment. It was in 2024. So we look ahead. There's exciting things going to happen this year. But right now, like Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 13, he says, we are looking through a glass darkly. It doesn't make sense. We look at 2024. We don't even know what this afternoon holds. We don't know if tomorrow will come. And so today is the day for us to think on the wisdom of God and to apply it to our lives. So what can we know for sure? If we can't know tomorrow for sure, what can we know for sure? I've never preached out of Malachi, I think. But I spent some time reading from there. Malachi chapter 3, verse 6. For I, the Lord, do not change. Everything around you is changing. Everything is transient. People will change. Opinions will change. Situations will change. Circumstances change. Everything is fluid. People you thought were, rock solid and committed, change. And if that's where you're placing your hope and trust, you're going to be disappointed. What will not change? I, the Lord, do not change. Malachi 3:6, Hebrews 13:8, probably quoting that verse. Jesus Christ, the same yesterday, today, and forever. He is who he says he is. And so as we consider the year ahead, place your hand into his. Walk with him. Go with him and apply his wisdom daily. Some would say that, in the 21st century, it's no longer relevant. Friends, we live in a confused world. People are grappling. And some of us here, those of us who have gotten to know truth, have something to share. Share the truth with those around you. The blacker the darkness, the more effective the light. When it is dusk, the light does less than it does at midnight when it is black. So go with God, as Micah in Micah 6, where he says, do justice. In other words, be fair with other people. Love mercy or kindness, and walk humbly with God into 2024. The verses that I've selected for this morning that I'm going to draw a few points from are very familiar to us. Excuse me. Possibly the most familiar verses from the book of Proverbs. No, I'm not talking about Proverbs 31, the virtuous woman. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord. Trust in the Lord. Do you trust? Do you? It's easy to say, oh yeah, I trust him. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him. Seek him. Apply his wisdom in all your ways. When you go out the door, when you are working at home, when you're talking with the neighbors, acknowledge him. Seek his wisdom into that situation, and he will make your paths straight. Trusting the God, we believe him. I have 3 points. Trust him entirely, trust him intimately, and trust him progressively. Number 1, trust him entirely. Trust in the Lord with your whole heart, not just with your... If you have boxes where you've separated your spiritual and your secular, you haven't quite made the connection yet about trusting with your whole heart. You haven't quite made the connection that there is not spiritual and secular in the hearts of believers or followers. And then it goes on to say, do not lean on your own understanding. Trust the Lord. Do you? But Pastor, you don't understand. I have been praying for a life partner. How am I supposed to trust him? It's not happening. You don't understand. You have never had that diagnosis. You're right. But it doesn't change who God is. I find so many times I take my situation, and then because God doesn't necessarily fit into my situation, I change him. But knowing that the one who does not change, as he states himself, the one who is rock solid, since he does not change, it should change our situation or how we view it. It does not mean that it's an easy situation. It does not mean that he will make things easy. Trusting the Lord with your whole heart. With your business, do you trust? With your struggles, do you trust? Your relationships, do you trust? With all your heart, entirely. There is not a part of life that is outside of God. He is omniscient. He knows everything. There is nothing that is outside of his knowing. I might say, God, I'm apt to say, God, where are you? Maybe I've lost a sight of him. I think every follower, every believer reaches that desert sometimes. You look at the Bible, they all did. Whether it's the courageous and brazen Peter who is cursing out and betraying Jesus when Jesus needs him most, or whether it's the prophets or Moses getting angry in the wilderness, they too faced those situations. There is not a part of your life that is outside of God. In every aspect of your life, you need him. We might know in our minds that he is trustworthy, but do we place our trust in him? Where I say, God, I am terrified. In so many ways, I'm unqualified to speak on this because I haven't lost my spouse. Some of you have. But bear with me, please, and believe that this remains the truth even if I have not walked in your shoes. Do we place our trust in him? The last part of this, so trust him entirely and do not lean on your own understanding. We are so apt to, right? We're so apt, like I said earlier, we're so apt to go to others for advice, when the one we trust most longs for us to place ourselves at his feet and to pour our hearts out to him. God is in. We are finite. We are limited. We simply do not see the whole picture. God is infinite. He has always been. There is nothing that has caught him off guard or by surprise. And yet, when we look at the giants of faith in the Bible, they faced desert experiences. If you are in a desert, please do not give up on God. If you are facing discouragement, God sees the whole picture. And it doesn't necessarily make sense to us. It didn't for Mary either when the angel came. And she said, how is this to be? And the angel says, God is going to visit you and you're going to become pregnant by the Holy Spirit. And Mary's life started being really hard. But she said, may it be according to God's will. I need to paraphrase. May your servant be used by God. The Bible is full of people who have surrendered, and God used them mightily, but their lives didn't get easy. We are finite. We are limited. He is limitless. He sees the whole picture. When things don't make sense to us, nothing has ever been confusing to God. Things simply don't make sense to us. When people say, well, why did this happen? I don't know. I was talking with someone in Drayton this week, and he had sort of asked me who I was, and we got talking, and one thing led to another, and I said, well, the reality is we live in a broken world, don't we? And but there is a Redeemer. And so I was sharing this, and eventually he says, stop using the word broken. He said, it makes me feel, he said, I come from a broken home, what people say. I said, yeah, perhaps I am using the wrong word. He said, and so it makes me feel anger, and it makes me feel sadness, and he started expressing these things, and I went, do you think that's an indication of something that's broken? I don't have necessarily all the answers, but I know one who does. There are times that I'm saying, God, where are you? God, what are you doing? God, why did you allow this? And perhaps one day we'll look back and see the whole picture. I'm sure we will. But I also know one thing's for sure. When we cross that final strand, and sometimes we're apt to say, oh, I'm going to ask God. I'm going to look back, and then it'll make sense to me. Oh, maybe it will, but I don't think we're going to be worried about a thing. We're not going to be worried about the things that didn't make sense then. We're going to be walking into glory. All right, next point. Trust him intimately. In all your ways, acknowledge him. How do we do that? Two ways. And it's amazing to me. It's amazing to me how many believers do not acknowledge God. In all your ways, acknowledge him. How do we do that? Well, two ways: through the word and prayer. We got to get serious about those two things. If you want to acknowledge him, we got to get into the word. We got to know the word. That's the word of God. And in prayer. Your word, we say it, is a lamp to my feet. It enlightens my path. It makes things bright. But how can we say that if we don't open it? How can we say that if we don't listen to it? How can we say that? His word enlightens our path if we are not making it a part of our day. And prayer. Acknowledge him. But acknowledge him in your work. Acknowledge him in your families, in your relationships. And I need to go on. The last point, trust him progressively. Progressively, I was a little hesitant with this term because it has a negative connotation perhaps in this age. But if you are not progressing, it just depends how you define progressive. If you are not progressing, you are likely going backwards, right? Trust him progressively, and he will make your paths straight. If Route 1 in California was straight, well, it wouldn't have nearly all the views, and it wouldn't be nearly as dangerous. If you look around, do you see anything crooked in the world? Crooked business deals, have you seen those? Have you seen crooked people? Crooked marriages? Crooked genders? Crooked. Everything around us is crooked. It's a crooked place. And people are doing crooked things every day all around us. And Jesus says, God says here, I will make your path straight, not crooked. I'm going to take those crooked things and I'm going to make it straight. It reminds me of the prophecy about Jesus, or about John the Baptist perhaps, where in Isaiah 40, where it says, a voice cries in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God, and every valley shall be lifted up. He's going to make those valleys in our lives straight. And he says he's going to make the mountains that loom in front of us, he's going to bring them down, and he's going to make a straight path for us. That's what he does. So the mountains that loom in front of you, or the valleys, the dark places, he wants to make straight. To progress is to move forward, to change, to allow ourselves to change. How scary is that? Maybe not for a young person, but it is for an old person. Change can be so scary. We need to. God doesn't change, but we want to be relevant, do we not? And so we continue to progress. We continue to move forward. We continue to change. How do we do that? We need wisdom. And God shares his wisdom in his word. Tap into it. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will take the crooked things of life and make them straight for you. Oh, to know the wisdom of God. May that become your desire and your prayer throughout the coming year. Romans chapter 11, I'd like to close with these verses 33 to 36. Oh, the depth of the riches and wisdom and knowledge of God. I could just stop there. That's the depth. Paul's saying here, it's inexhaustible. The depth of his riches. He's not talking about money. He's saying the richness of God, his wisdom and knowledge, there is nothing outside that he doesn't know. There is nothing that comes to him by surprise. He has never been late. He has never, he's never been caught off guard. And then Paul goes on, how unsearchable are his judgments and inscrutable are his ways. He is unsearchable. For who has known the mind of the Lord, or who has been his counselor? He has none. He is the most unsearchable being. He is the one who knows all things, and we ought to go to him in every situation, every day, and seek his wisdom. Who has known the mind of the Lord, or been his counselor, or who has given a gift to him, and he might be repaid? For from him, and through him, and to him are all things. From him, through him, to him, all things. That includes everything in your life. It includes every situation. It includes every sport you play, every hockey game you play, every relationship you have. He is there. The question is, are you tapping into that? Are you tapping into his wisdom? From him, through him, to him be glory forever. Amen. God bless you in 2024 as you seek his wisdom every day to apply to your situations, as you commit to him entirely, trust him entirely, trust him intimately, and trust him progressively. May God bless you all.